Hey guys, welcome back to episode 3 of my road to being a successful founder. So, I thought I would take some time to talk about some of the things that I've been doing this week. So, we're continuing coding, and I also worked on creating a project roadmap. So, I thought that while I do this series, I might as well talk about things that I've learned along the ways and maybe some things that might help future founders. So, there's lots of parts to being a founder, and the part that I'm on is creating a product, or at least a minimum viable product. And so this is the bare minimum that you need your product to be so that you can start selling it and advertising it and marketing it. And there's a lot of stuff that comes after making that minimum viable product. You have to think about advertising and the ways that you want to seed your company or your project, and in general, how you're supposed to make money from whatever you're building. And so there's a lot of stuff, and it can be very overwhelming when you're starting, and you may see all of these things, especially if you type into ChatGPT or you look up how to start a business or how to start your own application. And I think it's important to say that you should really only focus on making that minimum viable product. I mean, really, it's like the same thing, project, product. I mean, whatever you're building, it's a project. But that is the only thing that you have to worry about. So something that I was doing 2-3 months ago was I was making the UI mock or the wireframes. And it's important to do this because you want to give yourself an idea of what's possible UI wise, how you would want the things to look. And then after you make the wireframe, you have to ask yourself, does the stack of technology that I'm going to use support this UI that I want to create? And usually in technology, it should be possible, but it's more about if you have the expertise for it, if you have the knowledge to make that happen. And if you don't have that knowledge, what can you do so that you can learn what you need so that you can build your product? And so after making the UI mocks, I took a lot of time to decide on the type of stack that I wanted to use, the type of language that I wanted to use primarily for coding, and if that language was going to support the UI that I wanted. And for the most part, I kept that in mind when I was doing my UI mock. I realized that I'm not going to be able to do anything complex. I'm not going to be able to do crazy carousels or crazy animations because that's not my forte yet. And so while building it, I did keep in mind the idea of having a minimum viable product, something that people will like, something that's aesthetic, but isn't over the top to the point where I don't have the ability to do it. And so far, based on the initial UI mocks, we've been putting a lot of placeholders everywhere, like not having specific icons, not having a specific background color because we aren't sure what the color palette should be yet. And these are all things that are kind of on standby until things are fleshed out enough where I can choose colors that make sense to the product. And I want to make sure that everything is very cohesive and that when I look at the product, it invites people in. And so for that to happen, I need to just have the bones and the structures there coding wise so I can see it visually and also see how it is when I interact with it. And while coding, I realized that there's a lot of different things, a lot of different side quests that I could go on and a lot of different side questions that I could figure out or try to answer. And I've gone on 2 or 3 of those routes already and have wasted, well, not wasted, but I spent 4 to 5 hours on each of these questions to really dig into why things are happening in this new language that I'm learning, which is Dart and the framework Flutter. Now, it's not that it's not worth it. It's always good to dig into things and to understand why things work at their core, whether you're coding or whether you're doing carpentry, to figure out why things are the way that they are. But it becomes a problem when you are trying to get to that minimum viable product and when you're trying to ship things out as fast as you can, because the point is that you can think about all these different questions or all these things that are going to optimize your product. But the truth is that it doesn't matter how you want to optimize it. It depends on the feedback that you get from your customers or your user base. And the only way that you're going to grow your user base is by getting exposure. And the best way to get exposure is that you need a minimum viable product in order to show people that there's something that they can use or something that would get them interested in it, and see what they're interested in, what they don't like, and what you can remove or new ideas that you have from the community that sees your minimum viable product. So it's not exactly a race. There's not any pressure for people to copy your idea or anything. but you just want to get it out faster because it's going to exponentially speed up the way that you develop your product. Right now, for example, I'm struggling to pick a color palette, but if I have a minimum viable product, I could say, hey, here's what I have so far. It's gray and white. Are there any artists that would be able to suggest a color palette? I may get 10 different color palettes a lot faster than me searching it up and trying to compare colors when that's not my expertise. And another thing I wanted to talk about is also building in public. It's something that I've been trying to do. It's a way to get exposure to your product before you get a minimum viable product. So you talk about the product that you're making and the steps that you're taking while you're building it. And I think it's important to note for anyone that's doing it this way, because I'm doing it this way. So check out my Twitter if you want to follow along to see kind of examples of what I'm talking about. But after watching other people do it on Twitter and also people that do it on TikTok, it turns out that what they build in public is never the private stuff. So they never talk about their idea at scale or like what they're planning to do in the future for the most part, unless they already have that minimum viable product. Before they have that minimum viable product, they'll usually just say, hey, I'm working on an app, or spent 8 hours working on an app today. And I think it's just important to know that building in public doesn't mean that everything's out in the public. You just have to have certain things that are private. And this is a way to just contain confidentiality and to have peace of mind that your product is your product and you don't have to worry about other people copying it. And I asked a lot of people who were building in public, I reached out through DMs and asked them why exactly you aren't scared of people copying your work. And they told me that it's fine if other people copy your work because what matters at the end is the execution. And I think that's what really hit home for me. The thing that matters in building in public and is the line that you should never cross between what should go in public and what should stay behind closed doors is the execution. So if something has to do with what you're doing to create your product, that's something that should stay behind closed doors. But if you're showing the end product, if you're showing what you did after a long day of work, after 8 hours, you can show the final result because nobody will know what happened in those 8 hours. And yes, it's true. Some people may have the knowledge to look at it and say, oh, that took 8 hours. I know exactly how to do this. But the people that already know how to do it will probably have gone past what you're doing already or already have their own products because they figured it out themselves and that's why they know how to do it. So those people that know what you're doing aren't the type of people that copy your ideas. And it doesn't matter if you have 0 followers or if you have 1 million followers. Yes, the chances of someone copying you for anything that you do is higher when you have a higher subscriber count or higher follower count. But a rule that I learned in social media in general is that you should always act how you are going to act regardless of if you have 0 followers or you have 1 million followers. So if at 1 million followers you would be scared of people copying your idea, then you should also take those same guardrails that you're going to put for when you're at 0 followers. It doesn't mean that you have to be super secure about it. It just means to operate in a way where you don't have to change the way that you do things because things are starting to scale up. You don't want to start rethinking your content strategy or rethinking how you do everything in public or how you publicize everything because you got a certain amount of followers or a certain amount of following. You want things to be consistent so that you don't have to think about it anymore. You could just focus on what you want to focus on throughout that week. So come up with your strategy and then stick with it as long as you feel comfortable with it. Anyway, I ranted enough. This is the end of the episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. As always, if this video was helpful for you or if you liked it, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and as always, stay productive, keep improving, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.